What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Pick Six channel. And today, or actually yesterday, the NFL schedules have officially dropped. So now I'm going to be giving my official reaction to the Pittsburgh Steelers 2024-25 schedule. Okay, and it is pretty interesting to say the least. So let's pull it up right here. Okay. So they start off with their first two games on the road against the Falcons and the Broncos. Then their home opener is against the Chargers. Go back on the road against the Colts. At home for Sunday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys from Arlington. Go back to Vegas on October 13th, Week 6 against the Raiders. Week 7, they play the Jets on Sunday Night Football. Should be an interesting one. Week 9, they play the New York Football Giants from New Jersey on Monday Night Football. I'm surprised that's a primetime game. I feel like there's other games on this schedule that you could put primetime, but that's just me. Week 9, they get a bye. No complaints there whatsoever. Week 10, they play the Commanders in Washington. Not a fan of whenever the Steelers have to play in Washington. I'm sure a lot of teams are like that too. That's not the best stadium in the world. I'm just going to say that, okay? Then week 11, they played the Baltimore Ravens, their first divisional game in week 11. Let that sink in a little bit. I've never heard that before. Maybe I could just be tripping. I don't know. But I've never heard of a team go the first 10 weeks, the first 9 games without a divisional game. That's crazy to me. And they actually play their division 4 games in a row. They play their divisional rivals 4 games straight. After that, they have a short week against Cleveland on Thursday Night Football. Okay. After that, they stay in Ohio, and they play the Cincinnati Bengals. Then they're back home against the Browns. Stay in Pennsylvania to play the Philadelphia Eagles, a late game. Then on a Saturday, December 21st, they play the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I believe that this is only slated for Saturday because of the following game that the Steelers have. Okay. I've never seen a Saturday game get slated for before the season starts. I believe I've never seen it like predetermined like that. Usually they kind of choose that like a few weeks in advance. But this time for this season, they did it for the actual season. So that's pretty interesting. But they did that because the week after week 17, they play the Kansas City Chiefs on Christmas Day on a Wednesday. Okay. Then their final game is against the Cincinnati Bengals at home. It's a bit of a tough schedule. Okay. I believe it's the third hardest schedule in the league for this year. I'm not too sure who has the hardest. Is it the Ravens? I think it's either the Ravens or the Browns. One of those two. But, I mean, that's what you get from being the best division in the league, I guess. Huh? So, now let's break it down. I'm going to say this. The first half of the schedule is by far the easiest for the Steelers. Okay? The first half of the season is usually when the Steelers are still, not playing their best football. Still trying to really find their identity themselves. Steelers are typically slow starters when it comes to the season. Okay? Except for that 2020 season. All right, when they went 11-0. I don't even want to talk about that. But they're typically slow starters. They can't afford to do that this year. If they do that this year, it might be a rough season for the Steelers. I'm being completely honest. This is my complete honest take here, okay? I'm a super Steeler fan, but I'm being completely honest. All right. So when it goes for the first game against the Falcons, I believe that should be a win. Same thing against the Broncos, that should be a win. With the Chargers, I don't think they're going to be that good this year. Maybe next year or the year prior or the year following that. But this year, it just seems like they've lost a lot of weapons. They still have Justin Herbert, which they're going to be somewhat of a good team with Justin Herbert because, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But I don't think they're going to be as good. I think the Steelers should win that one as well. Colts could be one of the toss-up ones, potentially. Cowboys can also be another toss-up one, potentially. I think they should be able to beat the Raiders. The Jets, somewhat of a toss-up, but I think they could top the Jets as well. On Sunday night, that's a pretty good game for a Sunday night. Aaron Rodgers going up to Heinz Field to play the Steelers. That's a good Sunday night. Monday Night Football against the Giants. That's a weird game to have for prime time. I don't know. The Giants were not good last year. I don't think they're going to be good this year. I think they've even taken a step down. So for this to be a Monday night is an odd one. I think I see other teams that the Steelers play on the schedule that are probably more deserving of a Monday night game. Maybe a Bengals game. They don't play the Bengals prime time. At least it's not set for prime time. They do play on the last game of the year, but that would have been one that would have been cool to be on a Monday night. Then they have their bye after that. Go into Washington. That should be another win. Before the bye, I don't think it's too crazy for the Steelers to go 6-2. I don't think it's that crazy to say. 5-3, I could see that as well, but I'm gonna be a little bit more optimistic, so I'm gonna say 6-2. Okay. Then they should beat the Commanders, football team, Redskins, whatever you want to call them. 7-2 record, I believe. Then from here on out, from week 11 to week 18, I truly believe all these games is a toss-up. I truly, truly believe it. Okay. Week 11, at home against Baltimore. Now, the Steelers have kind of had their way with Baltimore since 2020? Okay, I think the Ravens have only beaten the Steelers once since 2020. And you could say, well, Lamar Jackson didn't play one of those games, or I don't even know how many of the games he didn't play. But if you want to look at Lamar's stats against the Steelers, his record against the Steelers, he has a below 500 record against the Steelers. Okay, if you want to go into those stats, look it up. Then they have a short week against the Browns. Okay, that's going to be rough. Okay, why is that rough? Because the Steeler-Raven rivalry is known to be the hardest hitting rivalry in the NFL. Okay, and they're going to play a short week after that. They have a short week after that against the Browns, a team that had the number one defense in the league last year. That's going to be tough. I'll be honest, I would favor the Browns in that game. I know, I get it. That sounds bad coming from a Steelers fan, but like I said, I'm being as realistic as possible here. Okay? So that's going to be rough. If I were not a Steelers fan, I would definitely favor the Browns there. After that, they play the Bengals. Last year they didn't play Joe Burrow at all. And it's worth noting that the Bengals with Joe Burrow is a completely different Bengals than Joe Burrow, or than the Bengals without Joe Burrow. Okay? That Bengal team is a contender with Joe Burrow. Without Joe Burrow, they're kind of just an average team. So that's definitely going to be a pretty tough one, you know. Then they go back home against Cleveland. Typically, the Steelers beat the Browns at home, so I definitely favor the Steelers in that one. Okay. All right, what happened to my screen? Okay. Then they go to Philly. I'm not sure how much better or how much worse the Eagles are going to be this year. I know they have Saquon Barkley, but with that complete meltdown that they had last year, I don't really know if they're still the team that they were in 2022. If they could be the team that they were 2 years ago. I'm not too sure about it. But they do have Saquon, so I'm assuming the run game is going to be better. Yeah, that's another toss-up one for me. Then they play the Ravens on a Saturday. You know, I've never, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've never seen a Saturday game that was determined before the season even started. Usually the Saturday game is determined like a week or two in advance, right? Because I know the Steelers had, 2 Saturday games last year, and those weren't announced until, literally a few weeks before then. But I think they only did it. They only did it for this year because on Christmas Day, the Steelers played the Kansas City Chiefs at home at Heinz Field. Okay. I have the same problem with the Thursday nighter that I have with the Christmas game. Okay. They're playing the Ravens the week before on a short week. That's another rough one, man. That's definitely gonna be a rough one. And against the Chiefs, the reigning, or I'm not gonna say reigning because it's not like they're defending their champions, but the Super Bowl champions of last year. I mean, on paper, I believe that should be a really good game. I know some people were probably saying, "Oh, the Chiefs are gonna blow them out. That's an easy win for the Chiefs." I think it's a little bit more evenly matched than people are saying it out to be. Now, don't get me wrong. If I wasn't a biased Steeler fan, right, I would definitely favor the Chiefs here. Okay, but not by too much. Okay, maybe by a touchdown or 10 points or something like that. I expect a good game out of that, you know. And for the Ravens, for the week prior, like I said, that's another toss-up as well. Okay. Then to end off the season, they play against the Cincinnati Bengals. Who knows the stakes for that one? Okay. The stakes for that game can be huge. It really can be. All right. So let me say this. What happened to me? As for the divisional game for week 18, that could be potentially for the division there. Like, who knows? I don't think it's impossible. I'm looking at the schedule. I know it's kind of tough. All right. I know it's a tough schedule. But it's worth noting that the quarterback situation is better than it was last year, that the offensive line should be better than it was last year, okay? And that was probably two of the major things on offense. So the offense should be better this year, okay? They still have George Pickens. I get maybe the wide receiving core isn't as stacked as it was last year, but, Roman Wilson, the Steelers have high hopes on Roman Wilson. Calvin Austin's still there. He was kind of underutilized last year. The guy's got speed. Okay, he does. And I kind of felt like it was kind of underutilized. Pat Fryermuth is still there. As for the tight end, he's still a solid tight end. I think that the weapons are finally going to start shining, including the running backs too. Najee Harris is the only running back who's had over 1,000 yards his first 3 years. Is the only current one, I should say. Sorry. And that was with not so good offensive lines. Okay, the offensive line has been a problem for years for the Steelers, and it should be better. It should be better. Okay. As for the defense, they got Patrick Queen now. That's definitely an upgrade. And the Steelers defense was at their best, healthy, one of the best defenses in the league. I'm not going to say they were the best, but they were one of the best. All right? The Steelers, on paper, have a better team than they did last year. Now they just have to show it. They had 10 wins with Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, and Mason Rudolph. And Mason Rudolph being the best out of the three. I don't think it's crazy to say that they could get 11 or 12 wins this year. Maybe even 13. It just depends on how they play against their division. In my eyes, that's really what it depends on. Because that's the toughest division in the league. It is. Last year, they went 5-1. If they go 5-1 in the division again, I most definitely can see them going 13-4. If they could put up a 5-1 record against the division again, are they going to do that again? It's going to be a little bit harder to do now that Burrow's back in town. The division's still good. Okay, and you're probably going to have to face Lamar Jackson twice this year as well, since people want to put an asterisk on that last win that the Steelers had against the Ravens. But, yeah, that's my prediction for this year. Anywhere between 11 years. Wow, I'm way off. Anywhere between 11 to 13 wins. I think their worst is 9-8. The worst is 9-8, and the ceiling is 13-4. Is that too crazy? I don't know. You guys can let me know in the comment section, but I'm very optimistic about this year for the Steelers. It should be interesting. Some big matchups this year for the Steelers, They have 4 primetime games this year, which that could also change. The last game of the season might be a primetime game. That might just be for the division. If all goes well. If the Bengals are there, if the Steelers are there, that's either for the division or, I don't know, maybe for the 5th seed or something. I do believe that game's going to mean something. But we'll just have to wait and see, man. What do you guys think the Steelers' record is going to be this year? Are you optimistic? Or are you kind of, they're just going to be back to 9-8, 10-7, kind of the same thing? How do you guys feel about the Steelers this year? I'm feeling pretty good. I am. But then again, I kind of was feeling pretty good last year. So maybe it's not a good thing that I feel good. We'll just have to wait and see. The quarterback situation is better. Offensive line is better. Should be a better team. So we'll just have to wait and see. As for this one, guys, that's about it. And you already know, I've got to make sure it's not upside down. Go Steelers.